Speaking of quarterbacks not screwing things up, I think your last question is one of the most interesting storylines of the entire NFL. Look at this tease. And it's not about a team we talk about very often. Hit me up.
Will the Titans' investments in Will Levis pay off? I am fascinated by the Titans this year because they have shown that they're all in on seeing what this Will Levis experiment at least turns out to be. We've seen a lot of young quarterbacks get into situations where they don't have the veteran talent around them to really hit the ground running and flourish a little bit. But I don't think you can say that about Will Levis. I know the Titans, they got laughed at a little bit for like how much they paid Calvin Ridley or going out to sign a running back like Tony Pollard, but you're in information finding mode. You know, you're not necessarily trying to compete. Right, I guess you're always trying to compete, but you're not necessarily thinking you're going to win a Super Bowl. But you've given Will Levis a chance, right? You have DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, Tony Pollard, TJ Spears, Okonkwo at tight end is a solid player, and you go out and you draft your left tackle of the future with J.C. Latham with the 7th pick. Giving him a chance. It's more than what a lot of young quarterbacks can say outside of like, you know, Caleb Williams and maybe Jaden Daniels this year with some of the talent they have at wide receiver. Now, will it pay off? I don't know. I think that's kind of tough to project without seeing like what Will Levis looks like in the preseason. But man, it's tough to say that they haven't given him like every chance to win this year, just based on how hard they went in on offense this offseason. So when you look at like supporting casts around the division, it's probably. I think it's better than Jacksonville's now because you stole their wide receiver. Maybe it's about on par with where Indianapolis is and what they put around Anthony Richardson. But this is a good group. It's a good group that's going to help you win games, and it's going to get Will Levis to be the best version of himself that he can be in year 2.
I really like the way you described the thought process on it because I guess there's a little element of like, why not? I mean, if you think there's any chance Will Levis is the guy, so who cares about your owner's money? Your owner went out and spent some money. Fine. They spend that money. They bring in enough talent. Now you're going to find out. You're going to know one way or the other. If he chokes, if Will Levis can't do it, well, you're probably going into the draft next year hoping you can find a quarterback. Again, I don't think that's a great class, but that's what you're hoping. But at least you've given yourself the opportunity to get the most accurate answer to this. Like, you're not putting him with a bunch of bums and then delaying it another year where you're like, yeah, but he just didn't have any good quarter or wide receivers around him. We got to get this. We got to get that. Like, you're eliminating all of the yeah buts and you're getting a definitive answer. And if he's not the guy, then whoever is drafted next year or whatever quarterback they bring in has a much better room to deal with as they're looking at and they're like, hey, it's this sort of like, let's build a solid foundation and then see if we have the right quarterback. If we don't, we're going to have an easier time when we get the right quarterback.
And this is, I really appreciate what the Titans did this year. It's more about like probably microaggressions that I have with like some of the maybe more analytics minded people on football Twitter, which is not like a big slight, but we get into this. It's a slight, not a big one. It's just a small one.
Tiny slight.
It's a tiny slight. We get into these conversations about like saving assets, saving cap space, not using these things on the wrong thing. And I remember when Calvin Ridley got his deal signed, people were like, oh, how could you spend all this money on Calvin Ridley? $23 million a year. Well, dude, at the time, the Titans, they had like $50 million in cap space left after they had already made moves that offseason or this past offseason. You don't get anything for walking into the season with a boatload of cap space. You don't win anything that way. Like you need to spend this money. You need to spend these assets and you need to compete. I think we've gotten to a point sometimes where people are so okay with just like sitting on assets and throwing a year away when that's not always practical. So I really appreciate what the Titans did. You spend money at wide receiver, you spend money at running back, you go draft an offensive tackle. Are you going to win the Super Bowl? Probably not. But you're going to get it. You're going to compete. You're going to see if you can find something. And that is the ethos of sports. So I just want to applaud Rand Carlin, applaud the Titans, and we're going to go take our sport back.
Yeah, there is some element of like, so I do a weekly hit. I lived in Nashville, for anyone that doesn't know, for over 20 years, right? So I do a weekly hit with the ESPN radio station there every week. And I said a few weeks ago, I said, anybody that makes a definitive statement about the Titans this year is lying to you. Because we don't know if Will Levis is the answer. We have no idea if Brian Callahan can be a head coach. We have no idea. Like, it might be, Could be. Who knows? Or it could be all Zach Taylor's offense and he's just out there getting lucky. I don't know. Like, we don't know what any of this looks like. So to me, that's one of the exciting things about the Titans. Like, I would not be surprised at all if when it all shakes out, the Titans finish in second in their division. Like, when you look across the board, I still don't trust the Jags right now to get things right. I don't know that we've seen enough from Anthony Richardson. The knock when he was drafted is he needs game experience. Well, I don't want to bog everybody down with details here, but he didn't get any damn game experience last year. He played, 5 games? Like, the thing he needs is reps. So we still don't really know what that's going to look like. And Jonathan Taylor wasn't himself when he came back rushing the football. Like, I think the only team right now that you can say definitively in that division that doesn't have any questions, clear-cut leader, is Houston. Like, Houston, their question is, can they figure out how to compete with Kansas City? But for everybody else, that's a jumbled mess where I could see a surprise team in that division winning 9 games.
Yeah. This division's up for the taking to me. I've seen a lot of talk about the Texans. I am a little bit concerned about their defense.
Oh,
just a smidge. They weren't actually that good on defense last year. They were like situationally good at times. You go back to the Browns games, like where they picked Joe Flacco off a couple of times. That was good. Then they go to Baltimore next week and just get run the hell off the ball. So I think that defense is probably still a year away from being the unit that they want. The offense is going to be awesome. But if you can find a way to score on the Texans, I think that this division's gettable. Maybe you're not winning the division, but you can steal a game to sneak into like that wild card spot at the end of the season. I just think all of these teams are especially, the Colts, the Jaguars, and the Titans. I think they're all just about the same thing in terms of like the total pieces that they've actually put together. Yeah, I would say of those 3, Trevor Lawrence is the best quarterback. But your best receiver just went over to the division rival. Anthony Richardson, you're back, but you only played 4 games last season. The Jonathan Taylor experience was better last year than it was the year before, but still kind of up and down. All these teams have flaws, but I don't think there's any bottom feeders here, which should make for a really fun division. Like, this is one group that I'm really looking forward to watching this year, just with the quarterback talent and mix of veteran talent that they've added, and get a little bit of bad blood between the Titans and the Jaguars, which is low-key a rivalry that has potential because those fans absolutely hate each other, if people weren't aware.
Regionally, that rivalry matters a lot. It'd be an interesting future show to do, like, rivalries that matter more locally than nationally. Because if you go to Titans fans and you say Jags, they still remember the year that the Titans only lost 3 games all year, 2 in the regular season, 1 in the playoffs, and all 3 of them were to the Jags. So like that stuff haunts, right? Like, it's just it absolutely sits. Like, Jags fans, Titans fans hate each other. It's an interesting rivalry. I could see it going 2 ways. I could see it going either like where this division becomes sneaky good, or we're sitting there late in the season saying, "Oh dear God, we have to watch the Colts and the Jags on Amazon tonight." Like, it just feels like that. There's no in between on all that.
Well, that's why we need the second bye week, because I feel like a lot of the things that we've struggled with in these Thursday night football games, like, Titans, Jags with no Trevor Lawrence in week 17. Yeah, I'm out on that too. But if we get the second bye week, like we talk about the start of the show, might get some healthier games.
Look at that. He's brought it all full circle. That's why he's an expert.